Now I will start recording for 15 minutes from the Can't Hurt Me by David Coggins. The whole point of the 24-hour mission is to keep up a championship pace, not for a season or a year, but for your entire life. That requires quality rest and recovery time because there is no finish line. There is always more to learn, and you will always have weaknesses to strengthen if you want to become as hard as woodpecker lips, hard enough to hammer countless miles and finish that shit strong. In 2008, I was back in Kona for the Ironman World Championships. I was in peak visibility mode for the Navy SEALs, and Commander Keith Davids, one of the best athletes I ever saw in the SEAL teams, and I was slated to do the race. The NBC Sports broadcast tracked our every move and turned our race within the race into a feature the announcers could cut to between cloaking the main contenders. Our entrance was straight out of a Hollywood pitch meeting. While most athletes were deep into their pre race rituals and getting psyched up for the longest day of their racing lives, we buzzed overhead in a C 130, jumped from 1500 feet, and parachuted into the water, where we were scooped by a Zodiac and motored to shore just 4 minutes before the gun. That was barely enough time for a blast of energy gel, a swig of water, and to change into a Navy SEAL triathlon suits. You know by now that I am slow in the water, and Davids destroyed my ass on the 2.4-mile swim. I am just as strong as he is on a bicycle, but my lower back tightened up that day, and at the halfway point, I had to stop and stretch out. By the time I coasted into the transition area after a 112-mile bike ride, Davids had 30 minutes on me, and early on in the marathon, I didn't do a great job of getting any of it back. My body was rebelling, and I had to walk those early miles, but I stayed in the fight and at mile 10 found a rhythm and started clipping time. Somewhere ahead of me, Davids blew up and I inched closer. For a few miles, I could see him plodding in the distance, suffering in those lava fields, heat shimmering off the asphalt in sheets. I knew he wanted to beat me because he was a proud man. He was an officer, a great operator, and a stud athlete. I wanted to beat him too. That's how Navy SEALs are wired, and I could have blown by him, but as I get closer, I told myself to humble up. I caught him with just over 2 miles to go. He looked at me with a mix of respect and hilarious exasperation. Fucking Goggins, he said with a smile. We had jumped into the water together, started the race together, and were gonna finish this thing together. We ran side by side for the final 2 miles, crossed the finish line, and hugged it out. It was a terrific fucking television. Everything was going well in my life. My career was spit shined and gleaming. I had made a name for myself in the sports world, and I had plans to get back onto the battlefield like a Navy SEAL should. But sometimes, even when you are doing everything right in life, shit storms appear and multiply. Chaos run and will Chaos can and will descend without warning, and when not if that happens, there won't be anything you can do to stop it. If you are fortunate, the issues or injuries are relatively minor, and when those incidents crop up, it's on you to adjust and stay after it. If you get injured or other complications arise that prevent you from working on your primary passion, refocus your energy elsewhere. The activities we pursue tend to be our strengths because it's fun to do what we are great at. Very few people enjoy working on their weaknesses. So, if you are a terrific runner with a key knee injury that will prevent you from running for 12 weeks, this is a that is a great time to get into yoga, increase your flexibility and your overall strength, which will make you better and less injury prone athlete. If you are a guitar player with a broken hand, sit down at the keys and use your one good hand to become a more versatile musician. The point is not to allow a setback to shatter our focus or our detours to dictate our mindset. Always be ready to adjust, recalibrate, and stay after it to become better somehow. The sole reason I work out like I do isn't to prepare for and win ultra races. I don't have an athletic motive at all. It's to prepare my mind for life itself. Life will always be the most grueling endurance sport, and when you train hard, get uncomfortable, and callous your mind, you will become a more versatile competitor, trained to find a way forward no matter what, because there will be times when the shit life throws at you isn't minor at all. Sometimes life hits you dead in the fucking heart. My 2 year stint on recruitment detail was due to end in 2009, and while I enjoyed my time inspiring the next gen, I was looking forward to getting back out and operating in the field. But before I left my post, I planned one more big splash. I would ride a bicycle from the beach in San Diego to Annapolis, Maryland in a legendary endurance road race. The race across America. The race was in June, and so from January to May, I spent all my free time on the bike. I woke up at 4 am and rode 110 miles before work, then rode 20 to 30 miles home at the end of a long work day. On weekends, I put in at least one 200-mile day and averaged over 700 miles per week. The race would take about 2 weeks to complete. There would be very little sleep involved, and I wanted to be ready for the greatest athletic challenge of my entire life. Then early May, everything capsized like a malfunctioning appliance. My heart went on the blink almost overnight. For years, my resting pulse rate was in the 30s. Suddenly, it was in the 70s and 80s, and any activity would spike it until I reversed or collapsed. If it was as if I had sprung a leak and all my energy had been sucked from my body. A simple 5 minute bike ride would send my heart racing to 150 beats per minute. It pounded uncontrollably during a short walk up a single flight of stairs. At first I thought it was from overtraining, and when I went to the doctor he agreed, but scheduled an echocardiogram for me at Balboa Hospital just in case. When I went in for the test, the tech curled up his all-knowing receiver and rolled it over my chest to get the angels he had need while I lay on my left side. He head away from his monitor. He was a talker and kept bullshitting about a whole lot of nothing while he checked out all my chambers and walls. Everything looked solid, he said, until suddenly, 45 minutes into the procedure, this chatty motherfucker stopped talking. Instead of his voice, I heard a lot of clicking and zooming. Then he left the room and reappeared with another tag a few minutes later. They clicked, zoomed, and whispered, but didn't let me in on their big secret. When people in white coats are treating your hurt as a puzzle to be solved right in front of you, it's hard not to think that you are probably pretty fucked up. part of me wanted answers immediately because I was scared as shit. But I didn't want to be a bitch and show my cards, so I opted to stay calm and let the professionals work. Within a few minutes, two other men walked into the room. One of them was a cardiologist. He took over the wand, rolled it on my chest, and peered into the monitor with one short nod. Then he patted me on the shoulder like I was his fucking intern and say, "Okay, let's talk. You have an atrial septal defect," he said as we stood in the hallway, his techs and nurses pacing back and forth, disappearing into and reappearing from rooms on either side of us. I started straight ahead and said nothing until he realized I had no idea what the fuck he was talking about. "You have a hole in your heart." He scrunched his forehead and stroked his chin. "A pretty good size one too. Holes don't just open in your heart, do they?" "No, no," he said with a laugh. "You were born with it." He went on to explain that the hole was in the wall between my right and left atria, which was a problem because when you have a hole between the chambers in your heart, oxygenated blood mixes with the non-oxygenated blood. Oxygen is an essential element that every single one of our cells needs to survive. According to the doctor, I was only supplying about half of the necessary oxygen my muscles and organs needed for optimal performance. That leads to swelling in the feet and abdomen, heart palpitations, and occasional bouts of shortness of breath. It certainly explained the fatigue I had been feeling recently. It also impacts the lungs, he said, because it floods the pulmonary blood vessels with more blood than they can handle, which makes it much more difficult to recover from overexertion and illness. I flashed back to all the issues I had recovering after contracting double pneumonia during my first hell week. The fluid I had in my lungs never fully receded during subsequent hell weeks, and after getting into ultras, I found myself hooking up phlegm during and after facing rashes. Some nights there was so much fluid in me I couldn't sleep. I would just sit up and spit phlegm into empty Gatorade bottles, wondering when that boring ritual would play itself out. Most people, when they become ultra obsessed, may deal with overuse injuries, but their cardiovascular system is finely tuned. Even though I was able to compete and accomplish so much with my broken body, I never felt that great. I had learned to endure and overcome, and as the doctor continued to download the essentials, I realized that for the first time in my entire life, I had also been pretty fucking lucky. You know, the backhanded brand of luck where you have a hole in your heart but are thanking God that it has not killed you yet. Because when you have an ASD like mine and you dive deep underwater, gas bubbles which are supposed to travel through the pulmonary blood vessels to be filtered through the lungs might leak from that hole upon ascent and recirculate as weaponized embolisms that can clog blood vessels in the brain and lead to a stroke, or block an artery to the heart and cause cardiac arrest. It's like diving in with a dirty bomb floating inside you, never knowing when or where it might go off. I was not alone in this fight. One out of every 10 children are born with this same defect, but in most cases, the whole closes on its own and surgery is not required. Just under 2,000 American children each year, surgery is required, but is usually administered before a patient starts school because there are better screening processes these days. Most people my age who were born with ASD left the hospital in their mother's arms and lived with a potential deadly problem without a clue. Until, like me, their heart started giving them trouble in their 30s. If I had ignored my warning signs, I could have dropped dead during a 4 mile run. That is why, if you are in the military and are diagnosed with an ASD, you can't jump out of airplanes or scuba dive. And if anyone had known of my condition, there is no way the Navy ever would have let me become a SEAL. It's astonishing I even made it through Hell Week, Badwater, or any of those other races. Thank you. That's it for the day.